It's 3 a.m. in the cattle cage. The line is long and thick with bodies. You wait. A jibneh sandwich with cucumber in a plastic bag clutched in your callous laborer's hand. Your wife prepared your breakfast and your lunch. She was up before you, and together you prayed a pre-dawn salat. She kissed your face and said, Allah ma'ak ya habibi. Allah be with you, my love. You kiss the faces of your sleeping babies. You haven't seen them awake in months, and you wonder, has Walid's voice begun to crack yet? Have Wijdad's hips begun to flare? How big was Surayya's smile when she came home with her report card? It's 4 a.m. in the cattle cage. Still, you wait. The line before you is so long, and behind you now it is longer. Few of you speak. You're packed so damn tight that you hold one another upright. You see your own fatigue reflected in the weariness etched on the faces all around you. You look away, pine for a smoke. But who the hell can afford that? You stare at the graffiti beyond the iron bars holding you in, written just for you, written by Zionist settlers sucking the breath from your lungs. You understand the meaning of their English words, die, sand niggers. Sometimes you pine for that too. It's 5 a.m. in the cattle cage. The soldiers arrive. The line loosens. You take one step forward, propelled by the weight of the bodies behind you. Your jibneh sandwich with cucumber in a plastic bag is crushed. It never survives. It's 7 a.m. in the cattle cage. Now is your turn. You produce your papers, unfold, refold, eyes down, heart down. Your shoes are down on their luck. But you're out of the line now. 15 men before you were pulled aside, and you tried not to look, tried not to hear the one yelling, "Don't hit me." It's 7:30 a.m. on the cattle bus, and you ride. The country they stole from you speeds outside your window, and you imagine the man you would have been. The man you should have been out there riding the family steed, the thoroughbred mares your grandfather raised and nurtured and loved in a Palestine, unraped, unstolen. It's 8 a.m. You get off the cattle bus. Your crushed jibneh sandwich with cucumber in a plastic bag in one hand, your eyes down, your heart down. You put your toolbox down to knock on the Zionist settler's back door where the help goes. But the Zionist settler boss man yells, "Wala! Mish hon el-yom." Not there today, boy. And all you can do is thank Allah that your wife and your babies are not there to hear them call you Wala.
The Arab armies succeeded in occupying several remote Jewish settlements for a few days. They also successfully attacked army convoys. But the final victory, unsurprisingly, belonged to the Zionists. They conquered 80% of Palestine, destroyed 531 villages, 11 urban neighborhoods and towns. Approximately 750,000 Palestinians were ethnically cleansed and were forced to leave everything behind as they fled for their lives. However, the ethnic cleansing didn't stop in 1948. It just shifted gear. In 1967, in the Six-Day War, Israel conquered what was left of Palestine, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Now, the remaining 20% of Palestine and all the Palestinians were under Zionist control. All the parties in the Israeli parliament, from right to left, are Zionist. In Israeli society, and increasingly in the outside world, it is only permissible to question the occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza siege. Anyone who questions the occupation of Palestine and the catastrophe Zionism brought on Palestinians is ostracized, silenced, called an anti-Semite, or, in case of a Jew, a self-hating Jew. Under the army's protection, and with the government's aid, Israeli settlements were erected in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Today, they cut through the Palestinian land and keep spreading. Some of them, like Ariel and Ma'ale Adumim, are already considered to be cities. The purpose of these Jewish enclaves is to isolate and stifle Palestinian settlements. This is achieved also through roads for Jews only, military checkpoints, and land seizure.
But we want a Palestinian state, the Bantustan, because we have to relieve ourselves of the Palestinian population, but it can't be a viable state. You see? And that's where the Bantustan idea comes in. So there are 4 elements on the ground that have created that Bantustan. And if you look at a map, we even have maps that show almost exactly the borders of this emerging Bantustan. One are areas A and B, the areas that were reserved for Palestinians during Oslo, the Oslo peace process. And that locks the Palestinians into these islands already on about 42% of the West Bank. Then, in addition to creating the contours of the state by areas A and B, Israel has created massive settlement blocks. 7 settlement blocks, not just discrete individual settlements, but 7 blocks that are consolidated, that then divide those areas A and B into islands, create Israeli corridors in between, and those settlement blocks will then be annexed to Israel. So Israel will essentially occupy 90% of the country, and the Palestinians will get 10% of the country in little tiny islands. That's the idea. That's the second element. The third element is the infrastructure. In other words, that Israel is building, with almost total American support, a $3 billion system of bypass roads and highways throughout the occupied territories that then link them physically into Israel proper. so that you create in the country, it's already been done pretty much, one urban fabric where the settlement blocks are an integral part of the metropolitan areas of Israel itself. One highway grid in which the bypass roads and highways of the West Bank and Gaza are integrated into those of Israel. One electrical system, one water system. So you create a situation on the ground where it's impossible to detach meaningful territory from Israel for a Palestinian state. That's the third element. And the fourth element is the wall that's being built. The wall that's being built that Israel calls a fence, because in some parts it's a massive fence, but when it comes to Palestinian populated areas, it becomes a wall. It's a wall twice as high as the Berlin Wall. A 24-foot high concrete wall that physically creates actual prison conditions for entire Palestinian cities, like Tulkarm, Qalqilia, cities of 70, 80,000 people, that alienates hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their land, from their water. It has tremendous impact. But what this wall does, the separation wall, is that it then sets these contours, these borders that have been set by the settlement blocks in areas A and B in concrete, so that it's a $2 billion system linked to a $3 billion highway system, linked to I don't know how many billions of dollars in the settlements, all designed to close the Palestinians into these little tiny islands.
The Palestinians rose up against the Israeli oppression in two popular uprisings, or intifadas. The first started in 1987 and ended in 1993. The Palestinians stood up to the Israeli oppression, extrajudicial killings, mass detentions, house demolitions, deportations, and land seizure. Generally, the Palestinian opposition takes the form of peaceful, non-violent protests, like in the village of Bilin and Nialin. But from time to time, it also takes the form of suicide attacks, when desperate young men, feeling they have nothing to live for, explode themselves in Israeli cities. But they were no match for the well-equipped Israeli army. Over 1,100 Palestinians died during the uprising, and many more were imprisoned or expelled. The first Intifada was put down by the Israeli government with so much brutality that the UN condemned Israel for violating the Geneva Conventions. The Intifada succeeded, however, in bringing the Palestinian case to the attention of the world. It also heralded the schizophrenic path that the Palestinian resistance would take from now on. While peaceful, non-violent demonstrations were conducted, suicide bombers entered Israel and blew up buses packed with people. The Second Intifada began in 2000 and continues until today. So far, it has claimed the lives of over 5,300 Palestinians and over 1,000 Israelis.
All this is happening before our eyes, and yet Israel gets away with it. How could that be? South Africa didn't get away with it. You know, everybody's criticizing China for its oppression. How does Israel get away with it? And that's one of the real problems that we have. One reason is, of course, is because of the media that tries to be even-handed or pro-Israeli. Zionism has a credibility. The idea that Israel is a Jewish state has a credibility that apartheid never had in South Africa. Christians that are critical hesitate to speak out because they're afraid of being smeared as anti-Semites. So you find very little criticism of Israel in the media. Part of it is, of course, the fact that we're dealing with Jews. So the non-Jewish world feels guilty for the Holocaust, feels guilty about the Jewish issue, and so on. It's used politically in a very effective way, in a very cynical way. I mean, it's very hard to say this, but I think it's true. It's seen as a very useful PR tool. You know, the way the government plays on the guilt in Europe over the Holocaust, so that you can't criticize us. Look what you did to us, you see. It intimidates non-Jews. It closes up discussion. It's very effective. And Israel is willing, for the sake of its PR and to silence critics, it's willing to sell the victims of the Holocaust.
I made this documentary so none can say in the future, "We didn't know." Now you know, so you can act. I also made this documentary because I have a huge debt to the Palestinians. One part of the debt is simply growing up in Israel. It sounds rather abstract to say I grew up on someone else's land. It is more to the point to say that I grew up in a block of flats in a suburb built on once beautiful olive and orange groves. I have no idea what happened to the owners of those groves. But if they are alive, they certainly live either in exile or in terrible conditions in a refugee camp.